I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Yo, what's good, everybody? You are now tuned into another episode of the Man Listen Show. But before we get started, let's hear a few words from our sponsors.
Are costly cable bills giving you the blues? Well, Magic Streams is your answer. Watch all of your favorite teams live in HD. You will also get access to over 1,500 movies and be able to watch TV shows instantly. Magic Streams. Click the link in our bio to get more information.
D's that mad flavor to your function. D's daiquiri. Good people, good vibe, one drink at a time. Good people, good vibe, one drink at a time. Flavor to your function. D's daiquiri. Good people, good vibe, one drink at a time. Good people, good vibe, one drink. Wanna kick back, wanna just vibe. Where a kickback? Let me first slide to the drink store. Let me just buy DD drink mixes, all of them fire. Fill me up a case, I'm finna drop bread. Marvelous mango, classic and red. Took them to the party, these folks won't leave me alone. They wanting me to share, they better get their own. DD's adding that flavor to your function. DD's daiquiri. Good vibe, one drink at a time. Good vibe, one drink at a time.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the Black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% Black all the time. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Man Listen Show. You can also subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can go to our website, www.manlistenshow.com, listen to past episodes, go to our Instagram, click the link in the bio. You can find our merchandise. Make sure you buy a hoodie, make sure you buy a t-shirt, help support the show, and make sure you let everybody know about the blackest radio show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. I'm your host, Mark B. Let's bring the crew in. All right, y'all. So last week, the boy Robert Kelly finally got sentenced. He got sentenced to 30 years in federal penitentiary. He was found guilty of racketeering, a RICO charge, based on his the Mann Act. I mean, there was the Mann Act that was involved, basically, and like they said, he had they said he was basically running a criminal enterprise.
Sex trafficking.
Trafficking, yeah.
Across state lines or something.
Yeah, moving those girls across state lines.
Yeah, so moving those girls across state lines was the Mann Act, which if you do some history on that has some racial implications behind that. But basically the fact that they said he had an enterprise where they was trafficking, women, sex trafficking, it all falls under the RICO guidelines. So he was given 30 years. And, a lot of people who were very pleased with the sentencing. Some people thought he should have got more. So, of course, we talk about topics that affect the Black community. There's a lot of different angles that go with this. We'll try to hit them all, but just asking the crew, what y'all think when y'all first saw what happened, the sentence that he got?
I'm not going to lie to you. I forgot, I just had forgot all about that he hadn't been sentenced yet. I just was like, he's in jail. I didn't even think to realize how long he was going to be in there. I just was like, he's in jail. So to see that he got sentenced to 30 years, I was like, man, honestly, I thought it was a little harsh, but I don't know.
Well, it takes some time. If the defense asks for a sentence and assessment report, it's basically where you try to get a more personalized view of the defendant before they get sentenced. It's kind of like a background check, you know what I mean? Like, we know this is what he's done publicly, but how did we get to this point? How was he raised? What happened to him as a child? What kind of traumas or mental illnesses or life experiences led him to this point? And so that's why sometimes sentencing can take a little bit longer. But I mean, you know me, this is a sensitive subject for me on this point, but I think that the problem with rapists and sex traffickers and people like that is that they feel like they're not doing anything wrong. And as long as they keep feeling like that, the only thing we're doing by not speaking up or not holding them accountable is making other people susceptible to their actions. And so it's not necessarily about, you know, punishing them for what they did to the other girls, because you can't fix what was done. It's about stopping them from permanently traumatizing somebody else in the future. And so, yeah, 30 years, life sentence, sure, because he doesn't think he did anything wrong. So, you know, sitting there with those other criminals and see how you feel in 30 years. So yeah, I think it's great.
I agree with Erika. I mean, he's been terrorizing young Black kids, considering Aaliyah and several others were only 14 when he started, for 30 years. I mean, that was what, 28, 29 years ago. So him getting 30 years, no, it's not a lot, because like she said, I mean, he doesn't see anything wrong in what he's doing. He's almost like a narcissist. Like when they have that narcissist behavior, they think that they're not going to get caught and they can continue to do it. I mean, if the Leah marriage and them having documents on that wasn't enough to jolt and scare him, then the video came out, that wasn't enough, and then more and more people came out. So it's almost like he just felt he was untouchable. And so they almost had to give him the time, like she said, just to protect other young Black girls who he was victimizing. It wasn't just the sexual assault. He did a lot of abusive stuff to all those girls and all those women over the years. And like I said, he's been at it for 30 years. So if he wasn't or shouldn't have got that much time, I don't know what the other answer could have been. Like, what's the other alternative?
Well, you know, I don't see nothing wrong with Robert doing a little bit of time. I didn't get that. That was
I thought he was about to sing the song.
I got it. But
about to sing the song. That's embarrassing.
But anyway, I had a problem with Robert getting sentenced to whatever he got sentenced to. I don't. I did think it was harsh only because the lady, what's her name, Ghislaine Maxwell, that was down with Epstein. She was charged the same week or the week before, and she got 20 years. So at first I was like, well, you know, it was too harsh because he got 30 and she got 20. And then my homegirl, shout out to Don Wynn, said, nah, she just didn't get enough. So that's probably a better way to say it. She didn't get enough.
That's a good way to look at it.
It's a better way to say it, but it's not equal. So then that's why I have a problem with that. And you know, we talked about it before. I think maybe we talked about it during Cosby when Cosby got off on that technicality with the prosecutorial misconduct. And Erika said it. She was like, you know, people want vengeance and not justice. See, I want justice, and I want justice to be applied equally, you know, amongst everybody. So that was problematic for me. Some of the other things that they did was problematic for me because, I mean, I can look past Robert Kelly and the stuff that he did, the foul stuff that he did. We'll kind of get deeper into it in terms of like, how was he able to get away with it? And, you know, why people look at it the way they do. But I like to look at it from a point of, if they could do that to a celebrity, what can they do to us? And I feel like he needs to be held accountable. And so does the justice system as well. And I know that's not easy to hear because so many people have either been traumatized or they are friends or family with somebody who's been traumatized. But I think that we still got to have some sort of logic and take the emotions away when we look at something like this.
But where did the justice system go wrong in this case?
Well, I just said, you know, they didn't charge the white lady as much as they charged him. And I know a lot of people try to say, well, she was an accomplice.
She was.
Okay. But let's ask Attorney Erika. Okay. Let's ask Attorney Erika. You got two clients, right? You represent two clients. And one commits a crime that ends in somebody dying, a murder. Are they going to try to convict both of them of that murder, even only one person actually committed the murder, right?
Yes.
So that's the same thing that should apply to Maxwell. She aided and abetted him in having sexual assaults. So hell, so if they could do it to black men, young black boys, they can do the same to her. Give her the same that they would give Robert.
That's not the same.
no,
I'm gonna let her
her being
read
just
Was she thrown? Was the RICO charge thrown on her too?
No,
Well, no, but and also he's talking about they're charged with murder. You can have somebody charged with first degree murder and the second one charged with, second degree or manslaughter. I'm gonna let Erika take it though, because I'm pretty sure she can.
Right. So yeah, let me qualify my answer, because if you're charged with felony murder and that's what you're saying, one person committed the murder and other people being charged, or even just conspiracy for murder, just because everybody's being charged with the same thing doesn't mean the jury's going to bring down the same number of years. That's not a thing. So even in like my friend's case, there was like one person got 25, one got 20, one got 18. They all got a lot of years, but they didn't all get the same amount of years. For one, different juries, different people, different, decisions. Our justice system is not, it's not uniform. It's a process, and there are imperfect people running that process. And so when you have these 12 jurors come back with a guilty plea, they're not necessarily going to come back with a guilty 30 years, guilty this. So that's just what happened in his case.
Do the juries give the sentencing, or does the judge?
So the judge has final say over everything that happens. But so when you think about so the whole process is still its own little process, right? Because so even though she's an accomplice and R. Kelly is the person actually doing the foul acts, they're playing different roles. So they have different levels of accountability. So the judge is going to look at them differently. The jury is going to look at them differently. What they're going to be found guilty of, even though it's maybe racketeering, is you can be found guilty of being the leader of a racketeering organization and being a participant in a racketeering organization, if that makes sense. And so it's like, even though you can both be found guilty of the same crime, especially in federal cases, your points are going to be higher if you have a higher level of culpability. So your points being higher in a federal case puts you in a different sentencing range anyway. So we have to base what you've previously been found guilty of and the maximum number of points, and then put you on the chart, and that's your sentencing guidelines rules. Same thing, like kind of what state judges try to do. They try to take a look at the totality of everything that you've ever done and the totality of your involvement in the situation. The ringleader is always going to get more than the minions. That's just a thing. That has to be a thing, right? You don't get to be top dog and then get to skate with the same thing the dude that is just standing on the corner doing what he's told to do gets to do. So no, I don't think that there's this huge discrepancy between what she got and what he got. There are different states, there are different laws, there are different courts, there are different jurors. What we do need to look at more is like when there are actual miscarriages of justice. I'm not going to spend a lot of my time worrying about whether or not a rapist got too much time. That's not something I'm going to spend my time on.
That's why I said she didn't get enough time, because I'm not trying to lobby for him to get less time. I'm just saying, but she didn't get enough time. That's what I'm saying.
But even when an accomplice, do you know how hard it is to win a rape case, period? 20 years is still a lot. That's a lot. 20 years, 30 years, both of these are a lot. Like, these are unprecedented amounts of time. There's a boy that got probation for raping a girl unconscious behind a trash can. So, I mean,
I understand. Yeah, that was
literally 20 years.
That was a terrible situation. I guess for me, you're the attorney, so I'm definitely not trying to argue something that you do every day for a living, right? I think, and then we can just get off of this, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm caping for Robert, because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for, what I consider to be justice. So when I look at the crack cocaine versus powder discrepancy, sentencing, when it comes to that, when it comes to, I remember I saw a story where these two boys were committed, I think maybe it was a robbery or something, and the police killed one of the boys, and they charged the other boy that was involved with murder, even though they were the one that killed the boy. So they play these games, they do these shenanigans. And even with the RICO charge, even with the whole RICO charge, I tried to research it, but it didn't seem as if they found a new victim. It seemed as if as soon as the documentary came out, right, they said, let us look at it differently. And then that's when they came up with the RICO charge. And the RICO charge to me is just like, hey, we can find a way to, all right, you guilty of this. Just like with them boys down the land, Young Thug and them.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, Tariq Nasheed said, it's like that. I'm white and I say so. Like, y'all did something, so I'm gonna find a way to do it. Now, am I defending Robert? No. Do I think Robert is a piece of you know what? Yes. But I'm telling you, if they could do stuff like that to one of us, they could do it to us all. You know, and I feel y'all when y'all say, hey, listen, I'm not gonna waste energy on defending Robert, but it's a problem. It's a problem in my opinion.
Well, I mean, but the underlying point there is that these people are actually committing crimes. If you want to argue that drugs shouldn't be illegal, that's a totally different argument. If you
We
want to
don't know that
argue,
Young Thug and them did crimes. We do
I
know
don't know
that
that they
Robert
did
did.
anything.
We do know that we do know that Robert did something because some of y'all watched the tape. So, and we saw where he actually married Aaliyah. I said some of y'all because I didn't watch that tape. I never watched that tape.
No.
But so we know he did something. But when they had an opportunity to put him in jail for that, they didn't do it. So how do you go back all these years later and just say, you know, hey, okay, we found a way to get him, so we're gonna get him now. He's up out of here. I don't know. Like I said,
Like I told you, you got to pick a different celebrity in order for me to. I'm just not gonna I'm not putting no energy into Robert.
Well, I'm not trying to convince anybody, but I'm just saying, like, you have to look
I mean,
at
your
it.
point is the problem with the RICO and how you can go back and find people guilty of
That's
stuff.
what it is, yeah.
But my issue with that point is that if the people are guilty, they're guilty. Like, you make a choice. Every time I have myself a little sip and decide to run to the store, I made a choice. I committed a crime. I knew I was committing a crime when I did it.
Let me ask you this, Attorney Enrico. We have statute of limitations for a reason, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know if I personally don't believe there should be statute of limitations when it comes to sexual assault and child molestation. I don't think there should be a statute of limitations of that because people suppress stuff and then it doesn't come out until years later. So I'm not, but I'm saying if they didn't get him the first time, how is it double? It doesn't seem right. But
what do you mean they didn't get him the first time?
Hell, he was on trial.
He's saying if you can't charge him with molesting Aaliyah or
the girl he had on tape.
Or the girl he had
Did
on
he
tape.
ever go to trial for Aaliyah?
But so those aren't the
didn't.
issues. So the issues are the girls who came out in the tape and said that they could not leave and they were being trafficked from place to place at his will. That's RICO. So that's federal, right? So the problem is when you have state laws, you have to abide by the state laws. Once you put yourself in a situation to fall under federal jurisdiction, the feds are going to go all the way. So the feds move entirely differently than the states move. Once the feds move on you, they've got everything they need to go ahead and prosecute and move forward. The feds don't even lift their pen to paper until they know they're gonna win their case. It's no point. You're really gonna have to have a Hail Mary or I don't know, a Jesus wept to get out of a Fed case. So prior to him moving those girls from state to state, it was not a Fed case. Anything he's doing in Chicago, Illinois law, all that shit applies. Once he started moving these girls from state to state and restricting their movements and not allowing them to do, whatever they're doing, whatever they're saying on these Surviving R. Kelly tapes and everything, that made it a Fed case. That made it a Fed situation. That's a totally different. Now that's how they got to the RICO case. That's how they got to all that racketeering and all this other stuff. That's not state.
I get that. When you cross state lines, it's Fed. But I won't belabor that point because, like I said, I know it comes off like I'm caping for Robert and I'm not.
No, it doesn't. I think you're making a bigger point.
Is a more important point. Issue. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to focus.
Is that we need to be cautious about being comfortable with it when the person is horrible, because it could also be applied when the person is one of our friends, family, cousins, whatever.
I'll tell the story. I know I told it on the show before. I remember I was listening to Tom Joyner, and they had an attorney on. They were talking about this guy where the prosecutors committed some sort of misconduct, right? And this guy was on death row, and they were talking about how we need to stand tall for this guy. We need to make sure that we get this overturned. But Tom Jordan challenged the attorney, and he was like, "Hey, but didn't this guy murder like all these other people or do all these other heinous acts? So why are we fighting for him?" And the guy said it. He was like, "Hey, look, any sort of miscarriage of justice, we have to fight because it can always be used against us at another time." So that resonated with me, and that's why I'm bringing up this point. But I know it's not a popular stance to have, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, we'll just leave it at that, because I know I'm not going to convince people. But that documentary, I think it really got him, you know, in jail. I mean, Dream Hampton, all the people that put that documentary together and got the witnesses, the victims, to come together and tell their stories. I think that because he would have still been out had they not put that documentary out.
Right. The bigger point is that it took a documentary to convict a known rapist. Like we've known, no one has had any doubts or questions. But it took a documentary. Child molester, rapist, statutory rapist, all this other stuff. It took a documentary. Guess what ain't going to happen for the rest of us? A damn documentary.
Well, I think that speaks to a bigger point where we don't want to admit to this because it's painful. But this was situations like Robert and young girls has been accepted in our community. It's been accepted. It may not have ever been approved of, right? But it's been accepted. I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, and I vividly remember guys in their mid-20s, possibly older, but I'm going to say the guys that I know of off the top of my head, they were well out of high school, you know, grown men, and they would cruise the parking lots. They'd have girlfriends who were in high school. Some of them I know would go to the girl's house, pick them up, drop them off, and all of that type of stuff. And at the time, me being a teenager myself, I always thought it was weak. Like, damn, dude, like, why you coming at girls that I'm supposed to be dating? You got all these grown women and these girls, you know, you dating the fine chicks that we supposed to be going after, man. You weak for that. But it wasn't until like I got to where I was getting closer to college where I was like, yeah, that ain't right. That ain't right. Because I always thought like, well, the girls have some agency as well. Like you as a teenager, not 45-year-old Marvin, but as a teenager, I'm like, well, shoot, why you being fast and dating that older dude? Now I look at it, I'm like, well, obviously he had more power in the relationship and he was wrong, right? But at the time, that stuff was accepted. And I know I talked to people in Chicago, it was well accepted in Chicago. They talk about the culture in Chicago. It ain't just Chicago.
No, exactly.
I know it happened in KC, probably happened in St. Louis. It happened everywhere. We got to talk about that.
Yeah. This the thing. And I almost don't want to bring it up, but a lot of us, you can go back literally to your grandfather and you can see some of them 15, 12, 13 years older than your grandmother. You know, I mean, things like that. So it's not something exclusive to the big cities with guys, you know, trying to be flashy, you know, riding around in fancy cars to pick up young girls. It's just something, like you said, it's just something that's always happened. And a lot of us in our family, you ain't never said, oh, my great granddaddy was a R. Kelly type of dude, because he was, I mean, nobody's ever said that in their life about their great grandfather.
But I kind of think times was different too, though. I mean,
that's my point. That's what I'm getting at. A lot of
you think about it
different.
Like I remember when I looked at when my grandmother passed away, and I looked at like when she died versus like when my dad's oldest brother, you know, died. I looked at their birth dates and stuff. Grandma was like 14, 15 when she had my oldest uncle.
Exactly. Yep.
16 when she had my pops. And she was married.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I was gonna say. I think the difference between back then is and what R. Kelly did is more of the relationship. I think back then a lot of men,
Aaliyah, though.
Yeah, but so they married young and they stuck with the whole, like he had no intentions of doing right by Aaliyah when he married her, not at all. And you know, I know people bring
I think he married her to cover for what he
Yeah.
was doing with Aaliyah.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened.
And and everybody brings up Elvis, and I'm not, blocking for him at all because I don't like him for various reasons. Not just the whole situation with that girl he married young, but I think with that girl, he was with her young and he married her and kind of did like Lab said, kind of that's the way it was years ago. With R. Kelly, it was just more or less him manipulating and just like molesting those girls and just going from one girl to the other because I'm assuming nobody his age was probably going to deal with it or put up with it. Like you said, Marv, when you had the older guys going to the high school. And so I think that's the difference too. So it's not so much the time. I think it's the type of relationship. Not that I think it's accepted. I don't care if you're 27 and you marry somebody 14. Today's age, we know better now. We didn't know better back then.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that at our, like literally people our age were one generation removed from that. So as you get further and further away from it, then things you start to look back on and be like, man, that was messed up what we used to accept. And so, not just with that, but just with a lot of things, really the dynamic of male versus female relationships is totally different now than it was 20 years or when I was in high school, 25, 26 years ago. I mean, it's totally different and it's changed for the better. And so we just need to keep pushing forward. But yeah, R. Kelly, I mean, we all know he did it. And I got a friend that she went to the same high school he went to. She was younger than me, but she used to say he used to pose at McDonald's across the street. He used to just post up over there.
Yeah, I mean, but he ain't no different than the dope dealers in Top City.
Yeah.
He ain't no different than the dope dealers in Top City. He used to be in the parking lots.
I think
he just was more, he just had more celebrity.
Back in the day, a lot of that was, hey, take this daughter of mine and marry her because I can't support all of these kids I have.
That's what
So it was more of a business transaction than a person out here like, hey, you got a daughter? I need a wife.
One last mouth to feed. One last mouth to feed.
Hey, some of these was business transactions too.
Right. And so a lot of women back then were married off young as part of, societal norms, business transactions. That's how all a part of that whole women's rights movement and everything, us getting our autonomy over our own person and all this stuff and not being the property of our daddy to be sold to our husband. But I mean, I think that's something that not justifies but qualifies what used to happen back in the day. That's not something that happens these days. That's not something that R. Kelly was experiencing. I think that a lot of times what he did was he targeted poor families so that the moms or the dads or whoever were more accommodating because he was paying the rent or making sure food was on the table or taking them out to nice dinners and stuff. So I think that kind of played a part in it. I mean, but that's all predatory, activity. I tell people all the time, a predator knows who their prey is. They go and choose the weakest gazelle in the bunch. They're going to choose the person who's going to be more accommodating, more susceptible to whatever it is that they're trying to do. A predator always knows their prey. So, I mean, that's R. Kelly.
Do you think that we will see any charges going after his entourage? Do you think we'll see, there's a lot of people say, go after the parents next. Go after the parents next. Do you think we'll see any of that?
So I don't know about the parents, but when you were talking about that Giselle Maxwell earlier, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, she got those 20 years for being an accomplished. There's a lot of people that helped R. Kelly, like who was the lookout outside the hotel room? Who was driving the tour bus when he was sleeping with the girls in the back? I think a lot of those people do need to be charged. But correct me if I'm wrong, Arika, it's not really, I guess, like you can't really charge somebody for knowing and not reporting, right? They just have to help with it. Is that what it is?
So first, you mean who's driving the school bus, not the tour bus? Second, yeah, every state is different. That's the problem, right? And so I think a lot of it is when you come to racketeering, you have to be an active member. You have to do something that furthers the overall mission. And so if you're not doing something to actively further the plan, then you can't be held accountable. So if my job is security and I'm just standing security, I'm not actually going out and grabbing kids off the school bus and putting them on the bus. I don't know if you can really make me a part of the grand scheme or common plan. So that's going to be more difficult than a different type of case. but
Do,
it's possible, but it depends on the state.
do you think that with R. Kelly being off the streets, right? Do you think that it sets an example or sets the tone that that's going to make young Black girls more safe?
Absolutely not. I mean, like, in what way? The thing about it is,
Do you think it would discourage, like I said, in me and Steve's hometown, it was prevalent. See, in my line, like it was prevalent.
No, I mean, I think it's everywhere. I think it's
Yeah,
pretty
but
popular.
I'm just speaking from what I know, my experience, and I'm using C to validate it because she grew up in the same town.
Mhm. But no, I think there's predators. There's people that are out there that are like that, and they continue to be
Right.
out there the same way it didn't scare R. Kelly the first time. It's not going to scare somebody else watching somebody else get locked up
Yeah.
for something. If that's the case, there would be
To-
no murders, there'd be no bank robberies, no nothing.
to what Erika said too, these cats that we talking about in your hometown, they ain't gonna have a documentary about them. So they're not really phased by it at all. It's business as usual.
But do you
and
think people will be more apt to speak out about it? Because let me tell you
no,
something. Let me tell you something. Hold on a second. I specifically saw older guys cruising the parking lots, right? You know what I didn't see? I didn't see any administrator. I didn't see any teacher trying to run them off. And hell, they teachers, hey, I get it. Teachers are already overworked or whatever. But I'm just saying it was more acceptable. Do you think young women know, hey, listen, I shouldn't be talking to that guy that's giving me that attention? I'm just asking the question.
name me a 13-year-old that knows who R. Kelly is or knows that anybody was just sentenced to 30 years. That's the whole point of preying on children. They dumb. Like, I
I
mean,
say that all
That's
the
a good
time. That's
point.
why
That's
when
a
you
pretty
see
good
those
point,
older guys, like our age is like 40 something, and then next, they're posting pictures on social media with somebody that's 22, 23. I'm just like, the stuff that comes out of their mouth, they can only get that by somebody who's 20 years younger than them. So to
Mhm.
Erika's point, imagine those ones that are going to go even lower than those 20, 21-year-olds knowing they almost 50.
Yeah.
man.
And I think too, the other thing is like you have such a limited view of the world. Like, so when your world is high school or middle school or whatever, and then you get exposed to something even moderately bigger than that, be it a 20-year-old or a pop star or whatever he is, you're always going to be impressed by that because we're always excited about what's next or what's something that we haven't been exposed to, because then we gonna take that information back to whoever. I mean, so and that works in a positive and a negative way. So like, my first rapist said he would murder me if I mess with somebody else. I believe that. I really thought I couldn't mess with anybody else besides this dude for like years. Like, so you don't necessarily think about how stupid you are until you're like exposed to something, bigger. And
Yeah.
then you're like, wait a minute, this
Manipulation.
actually doesn't make sense. But I mean, you're a child. And that's the whole point. A predator knows their prey. You're not going to choose a child that's wise beyond their years that's going to say, no, this math ain't mathing. No, you're going to choose a gullible child whose parents don't let her leave the house and she don't have that many friends and she don't have nobody to talk to and nobody listens to her. Yeah, that's easy,
And
right?
and
That's
that's a
easy.
good point, because I used to think all the time, I'm like, Black women age so gracefully. So if he was really into people that look younger, I always said, why wouldn't he just find an 18, 19, or 20-year-old, even early 20s, who looked 13 or 14? Because there's a lot of Black women who are in the early
Yeah.
20s that could pass for 15 or 16 hands down. But like you said, mentally, they're not going to be in that same
Mm-mm.
space. So
It's the
I guess
mindset.
that's why, yeah.
It's the ability to control and manipulate at such a level that could have impact for years.
Mhm.
Like,
It's power. It's power.
yeah,
Yeah.
over like
It's
if you
definitely
think about
power.
like how much control we have over our own children, the things we tell them or say to them impacts them for the rest of their lives. If somebody else was to infiltrate that child's mind, in any type of way, negative or positive, that's going to have long lasting implications. And that's exactly what a predator does. They go ahead and infiltrate a young mind that they can control and manipulate for years to come. And that's what they do. These women on Surviving R. Kelly, I mean, I didn't watch it, I couldn't, but I mean, years. And he just told them they couldn't leave until they thought they
I
couldn't leave.
know. I know.
Told
I
them they
saw the
couldn't
one
talk to
girl
their family, so they didn't talk to their family. They just
wouldn't
didn't.
let them leave the room, go to the bathroom.
They
Told them
just
they
didn't know that they couldn't.
I watched it, and it definitely was troubling. Um, you know, I was, you know, there's people who are conflicted by some of the accounts. You know, I'll leave my opinion on that. I'll keep that to myself. I just hope that all of our Black children are more safe. Because, and I hope that we as parents, as older adults, you know, speak out and do what we can to try to keep them more safe. Because even though he needs to be held accountable for his actions, and I'm not caping for him, he was a victim as well. And hurt people. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So we talked about protecting these young boys. I know a lot of dudes that they were taken advantage of, and not by men, you know what I mean, by older women. And the sad part about that situation, those guys that I know who had their virginity taken when they were like 10, 11, 12 by some older woman or older teenager, they don't realize that they are messed up. They don't realize that they have been traumatized. They don't realize that they are a victim, right? And their whole approach and mindset and view and perspective of women is thrown off because of what happened to them. And again, Robert had enough time to address that. He had enough money, resources to address all of those things. Therapy works, right? And when he got off the first time, he should have learned his lesson then, right? But he kept going, to Steve's point. So I'm definitely not capable for him, but I think that I'm hoping that we learn a lesson and like, hey, let's keep these children more safe from these predators. So anything else I want to say about it?
I would say that that's a good point, though. I think that a lot of times that what we don't realize is that these traumas that go unaddressed manifest in other ways when they get older and whatnot, not just with children, with adults, because those adults with traumas end up impacting children. The children end up growing up with adults with traumas, whatever. And so it's like we have to like make it a personal mission for our people to make therapy and counseling and opening up and addressing our traumas like a thing. Like that's one of the reasons why like I have like after I went through counseling like the first time, I was like I have to like be open and honest about my experiences because one, it helps me not feel like it's something that, you know what I mean, like I invited or that I deserved or something like that. But it also helps me to start conversations with people that might not necessarily happen otherwise, that they might need, that I don't necessarily need because I'm going to counseling now, therapy, but whatever. But I think that sometimes when you start these conversations, these uncomfortable conversations, sometimes people are like, ooh, like, hey, we don't talk about these things. And I'm like, no, we need to. Like, we absolutely need to. So even though it's uncomfortable, if you create that safe space for people, then we'll remove that stigma from other people. Like that, oh, don't tell anybody because no one's going to believe you, or that, oh, this is going to be, you know, something that you have to carry around and people are going to feel some type of way about you for forever, so you got to keep it a secret and keep it bottled up. If we could remove that, the stigma of all of the trauma, not just one, not just sexual trauma, but just life trauma, period, if we could remove that stigma and start having these conversations, I think that that's going to be the best way to catapult our people into healing, period, is just having the conversations.
Yeah,
That's my soapbox.
you know, I'm a huge proponent of therapy, and like you, Rika, I mean, I tell my business all the time. You know, people call me on these shows to talk about mental health, and I do that because I try to lead by example. You know, I went to therapy today. I kind of felt myself getting a little down. Went and talked to my therapist, boom, got myself right. So definitely something that we should do. I feel bad because I feel like we probably should have put a trigger warning, or I did a trigger warning announcement on this show. So if anybody was triggered by this, our apologies, but we definitely wanted to talk about this, and it's because it's an important topic. I think it's something that we should learn a lesson from. So I think we talked about it enough. Make sure y'all follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at manlistenshow. Subscribe to the show on YouTube. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Did he get enough time? Should he have got more time? Is this something that is ingrained in our culture? Are our children more safe now that R. Kelly is off the streets? Let us know what you think. Anyway, we'll holler at you. Peace.
Peace.